Hello my crochet friends, this is Sarah from Ned and Mimi, and in this video we are going to crochet these cozy leg warmers. Now there is a free crochet pattern to accompany this video, and that is available on my website nedandmimi.com, and I have linked to it below. So the pattern is written for 8 sizes from baby up to adult large, so this is a super project to make for gifts. In the video, I am going to make the adult small size, but do make sure to grab the free pattern so that you can follow along for whatever size you want to make. And of course, if you do have a second to like this video and subscribe, that would be absolutely amazing. Let's first have a quick look at the supplies you are going to need. So this pattern calls for a weight 4 or worsted weight yarn, and I used wool of the Andes Tweed from We Crochet for my leg warmers. You'll also need a 5.5mm or a letter I crochet hook, as well as a yarn needle for weaving in ends, and optionally a stitch marker, and this is handy to help you anywhere that you're finding stitch placement a little bit tricky. Now, one final note on the hook size before we get started. So while I used a 5.5mm hook, please do keep in mind that if you crochet a little more tightly or loosely than I do, you might need to use a larger or smaller hook in order to be able to match my gauge. And this is so important to ensure that your leg warmers turn out the size that you expect. Now, if the concept of gauge is brand new to you, or if it's a little fuzzy, then don't worry, I do have a short video that will clear everything up, so please do go and watch that if you need help with your gauge. So just one last thing before we get started, I am just going to give you a quick overview of how this leg warmer is crocheted. So it is worked completely flat, all in one piece, and then seamed at the end at the back. So we'll start with the bottom ribbing, then work the body, which is a simple 2-row repeat, and then finally we will work the top ribbing, and we are going to do that with a join as you go method. So we'll be joining the ribbing all along the top edge as we work. So now, without further ado, let us get started. So to work the ribbing, I am going to start with a slip knot on my hook, and then I am going to chain 10. Okay, and my first row is going to be a half double crochet slip stitch. So to do that, I yarn over, and I'm going to insert my hook into the second chain from the hook. So I'm going to skip that first chain. So insert that in, yarn over again, and now I have 3 loops on my hook. And I'm not going to yarn over, I'm going to continue to pull through those first 2 loops. So I'll work the next one in exactly the same way. So I yarn over, insert my hook into the next chain, yarn over and pull through, and now I continue to pull through to create my second half double crochet slip stitch. And sometimes this is called a yarn over slip stitch, and they both mean the same thing. So I call it half double crochet slip stitch just because I start off as a half double crochet and I find it easier to remember that way. So I'm going to continue along the chain, and you'll see that as I pull through, I am angling my hook away from me, and I just find it much easier to pull through than if I was trying to do it this way. It kind of tends to get stuck a little bit. So if I turn it away and pull through, it's much more seamless, and as you practice it, you will end up getting a lot faster at working this stitch. So at the end of this first row, I'm going to have 9 stitches. Okay, so that's the first row of my ribbing done. And to continue, I'm going to chain 1 and turn. And now I'm going to continue to work half double crochet slip stitches, but I'm going to work into the back loop of the previous row. So always working into the back loop. So I yarn over, insert my hook into the back loop, yarn over and pull through, and then pull through those 2 loops and repeat. Now the last stitch can be a little bit tricky sometimes just to find that back loop. So I'll work that one again slowly. And now I have 2 rows done. So it's a bit early to see the ribbing forming, but you can kind of see already this is going to be the row that looks like our knitting, and this row here is going to be the row that kind of looks like a purl row. So all I have to do is repeat that previous row for as long as we need the ribbing to be. So always working into the back loop and turning the hook away. And by using a slightly larger hook for this yarn than I normally would, it's going to keep the ribbing from getting too tight. So sometimes these slip stitches can get really tight and it can get a little bit tricky to work them, but the larger hook will help with that. Now again, my last stitch is a little bit hidden there. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with the ribbing, and for the size that I am making I need to crochet 38 rows of ribbing. So I will keep going with that until I have crocheted 38 rows, and then I will come back into the video to start the body of the leg warmer. Okay, so I have finished my ribbing rows, so I have my 38 rows here, and you can see really clearly now the ribbing pattern. So it looks quite like knitting, doesn't it? And I'm going to continue on now working the body of the leg warmer, and I'm going to keep working flat, so I'm not going to seam anything yet. And my first row is going to be a row of half double crochets worked into the edge of the ribbing, so all along here, and I'm going to work 1 half double crochet for each row of ribbing. So that means I'm going to have 38 half double crochet stitches in this row. So I will get started with that. I'm going to chain 1, that does not count as a stitch, and then I'll work a half double crochet into the edge of the ribbing, and I'm just going to continue working along, working 1 half double crochet stitch for each row of ribbing. And this is not an exact science as to where you place your stitches, but it's not too difficult to follow the ribbing pattern and just keep working evenly as you can along the edge of the ribbing. So I'm going to continue on until I have worked my 38 stitches, and then we will start on the second row. Okay, so I've just worked that first row, so I have my 38 half double crochet stitches all the way along the edge of the ribbing. So now on to row 2. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and this is going to be a row of slip stitches, but I'm going to work them into the back loop only of each half double crochet stitch across. And the important thing to remember with these slip stitches is to try and keep your tension as loose as possible, because even with the slightly larger hook, they're going to have a tendency to try and tighten up. So we're just going to work a slip stitch in the back loop all the way across. And as you get a little bit faster, you can try to work your slip stitch in one movement like this. And through a lot of practice and trial and error, I found that this was the easiest way for me to keep my stitches loose and to stop myself tightening them up too much. Okay, so that's the second row done, and that's just the row of slip stitches in the back loop all the way across. So we still have the same number of stitches, so still 38 stitches. And now I'm going to get on to row 3. And the good news is that after this, it's just a matter of repeating the half double crochet and slip stitch rows for the entire body of the leg warmer. So that's good. Okay, so this is going to be a row of half double crochet stitches, and they are going to be worked into both loops of the slip stitch. So for me, this is the only row that gets a little bit tricky because it's just to make sure that you're going into the right loops. So I'm going to yarn over, and now this is my slip stitch. So you can see front loop, back loop, front loop, back loop, and I just want to work into both loops of the slip stitch. So if you have been keeping your tension quite loose, it should be pretty easy to get your hook into the slip stitch. And if you're finding that it's really difficult to get your hook through both of those loops, that's a sign that you need to loosen up a little bit on your tension. Okay, so that's the first half double crochet made. So we just repeat those half double crochets through both loops of the slip stitch all the way across. And you can see some of mine actually are a little bit tight. So that is just something for me to be aware of for my next row. So I'm going to continue on with that, and when we get to the end of the row, it is just going to be a matter of turning and repeating the slip stitch row. So I have just completed row 3, and for the rest of the body, all I need to do is repeat that slip stitch row through the back loop, and then the half double crochet row through both loops. And I just repeat that for as high as I want my leg warmer to be. And I'm going to end on a slip stitch row. So it's going to be an even number of rows, starting with this half double crochet row here. And coincidentally, for the size that I am making, I need to complete 38 rows, but that will obviously differ depending on your size that you're making. And also, if you want to make it longer or shorter, it's very easy to do that. You just crochet the number of rows that correspond to the height that you want to make, and then just make sure to end on a slip stitch row, so end on an even row. So I'm going to continue on with this pattern, and then I will come back into the video to work the ribbing at the top. Okay, so I have just finished the main block of the leg warmer. So the ribbing, and then the alternating rows of half double crochet and slip stitch all the way up to the top. And this is the right side as I'm looking at it. So now I am going to crochet the top ribbing, and it's going to be very similar to the bottom ribbing, except that I'm going to join it onto this final row as I go. So the last row that I worked was the row of slip stitches, and that's the row that I'm going to join into as well as I go along. So you can see these stitches here. They're the slip stitches. Okay, so I'm just going to insert my hook, and I am going to chain 10. So that's going to be the height of my ribbing, and I'm just going to continue working across here, joining on as I go. So as with the first band of ribbing, this is going to be done using the half double crochet slip stitch as well. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into the second chain from the hook, yarn over and pull all the way through, and just continue that all the way down the chain until I have worked 9 stitches. That's 9. So that's going to be the first ribbing row. Now what I need to do here is I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the first slip stitch in the row. So I just insert my hook into that slip stitch and yarn over and pull through. And now I'm going to work a slip stitch into the next stitch as well. So into the next stitch, working through both loops and pull through. Okay, so now I have joined that row of ribbing onto the body, and now I am just going to turn my work, And I'm going to skip those 2 slip stitches that I just made. So this one and this one, I'm going to not work into them, and I'm going to work my first half double crochet of the second row into this half double crochet here, half double crochet slip stitch. And again, as with the previous row of ribbing, previous band of ribbing, we're going to work into the back loop. And I will have 9 stitches in this row as well. Okay, so that's 2 rows of ribbing done. Now the third row is really easy. You just chain 1 and turn, and then it's going to be half double crochet slip stitches all the way along the row again. So now we have 3 rows done, and again we just need to join in to the last row of the body. So we're going to slip stitch to the next slip stitch, and then again slip stitch to the next one. And I'm going to continue with that pattern. So I turn, and now again skip the first 2 stitches here, so skip those 2 slip stitches that we just made, yarn over, insert into the back loop, and work 9 more half double crochet slip stitches. And now we're just going to chain 1, turn again, and then we keep going. So we're just going to repeat these rows all the way across the top of the leg warmer until we have worked the same number of ribbing rows as the stitch count in the last row of the body. Okay, so I have finished my ribbing, and then I have just fastened off, leaving a nice long tail, because I'm going to use that to seam the edges together and just pull that tail through. So to do the seaming, I'm going to use the mattress stitch. So I'm going to fold the leg warmer in half, and I'm going to seam on the right side. So this is the right side with these ridges here. So to get started, I am just going to take my tail here and secure it to the other side. And then I'm going to start weaving in and out, so going down and up on one side and then down and up on the other side. And this will create a zigzag of the yarn, which I'm going to pull to close up the seam, and it's going to be very close to invisible actually.
So that is my seam done, and now all I've left to do is weave in my ends, and I'll be ready to go straight onto my second leg warmer. So once you have both of those done, you are good to go.
I hope you have enjoyed making these crochet leg warmers with me, and if you do have a second to subscribe, that would be really great. I have lots more tutorials and patterns on my channel and website nedandmimi.com, so do check those out. Happy crocheting and take care.